Tonight, the World Bank president admits mistakes were made as scandal threatens to overshadow the meetings with the IMF in Washington. In an exclusive interview, President David Malpass admits to me there were certainly mistakes in the bank's processes and its prestigious Doing Business report. Last month, an independent law firm found top World Bank officials have put undue pressure on the report's authors to boost the ratings of China and Saudi Arabia. Those claims have shocked the world of economics. They've threatened to unseat the current IMF managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, who was running the World Bank. She was the CEO there at the time. Now, the IMF board is meeting today to discuss Georgieva's future. President David Malpass said he couldn't comment on her fate while that review is underway. But he joined me for an exclusive interview as the bank also warned lower income countries are facing a huge debt burden in the wake of COVID, one that is unsustainable. I asked David Malpass, did the bank need to change the way it handled reports in the future?
As far as the need for strong reports, absolutely. We are changing constantly. And as I came in as president of the World Bank, we made a number of changes and improvements in the ways that we look for quality research. I just last week elevated Carmen Reinhart, a world famous economist and researcher, to our senior management team, which will add to the value of the crossover with our programs. Critical for the World Bank is to have good development outcomes country by country, and that's going to be based on very high quality research, and we're constantly working to improve that.
So how do you protect your staff from legitimate or otherwise pressure from individual countries? And there were several have been identified, and you and I have been around this long enough to know that this sort of thing happens. Countries do put pressure on different organizations. How can you protect legitimate pressure? How can you protect your staff?
One is to make a very clear statement that the World Bank operates on transparency, and there's an environment that does not retaliate with staff. And there are substantial safeguards within the bank in that regard, in the justice process within the bank. So we're reinforcing that, and we're working to have the climate for all staff be one that's conducive to the mission. The core is to have the mission of reducing poverty and improving shared prosperity for our clients is ultimate, and that requires a good environment for staff. And there are multiple procedures to protect that.
Last question on this area, sir, but I understand this didn't happen on your watch, but you are now the president of the World Bank, and you are the man who has the task of leading to clean it up. This is amongst the most embarrassing incidents that the bank has faced. There
were certainly mistakes in the process of the bank, and the bank needs to find ways to avoid that into the future. And I'm working on that as hard as I can so that the bank has a good environment to create quality projects into the future.
If we look now at the debt report, there's two arguments here, isn't there? Now, if you're going to borrow money, now's the time to do it. You can borrow for next to nothing. The problem is, many of those countries borrowing at next to nothing are the very ones that won't be able to repay. Square that circle for me.
This is a really challenging financial climate for the whole world. There's the oddity of borrowing at next to nothing, which is inconsistent with how do you have a return on investment and how do market forces work in a zero interest rate environment. So that's a fundamental challenge for economics. And then as we think about development, the concept has been that there would be investment from advanced economies and the investors, from individuals, into faster growing developing countries. Well, that's not what we're seeing right now in the pace of the recovery. So the advanced economies are growing faster, but not only in a GDP sense, but in a per capita sense. And so that's undercutting the development concepts that are based on new investment flows. The World Bank is putting new resources into developing countries all the time, and that's a positive factor, but it doesn't square the circle. It leaves us with this gap. How do we develop when the world system is not set up to be conducive? Let me add one more, Richard, is the bankruptcy process that I've talked about a lot. In the private sector, if you make a mistake, if you're unsustainable, if you hit the wall, you declare bankruptcy, and there's a way to work out with creditors what to do. There's a legal process. There's no corollary in the sovereign debt system. So this leaves a big gap in the way the global system works. This is something that New York and London, the world financial centers, I think have to think about, that you're creating debt contracts without an exit in the event of unsustainability.
Are you expecting some countries to default?
I expect there will be some defaults or non-payments, and even the definition of what what definition that takes. We already have Zambia in default on a bond or on their debt, and they've asked for common framework treatment under the G20 initiative. These are challenging, and we've suggested some ways to strengthen the implementation of the common framework. We've suggested that, and the G20 is working on ways to make it more effective.
When you were appointed president of the World Bank, there was some sort of an eyebrow raised that the fox might be about to join the chicken house, or indeed, or some other version of that analogy. You know what I'm talking about. So I asked myself, at the end of the day, what reform do you want to make of the whole thing? Now, I agree, you came in COVID. It's very difficult to do all these reforms. But what reform, fundamental, root and branch form, do you want to make of these organizations now you've been there a while and you've seen them?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I started in multilateral development in 1984 with the U.S. government, with my work at the staff of the Senate Budget Committee, which and so I've worked a long time on these issues. The reform, and I came in a year before COVID struck, so we did a lot of reforms in that first year. One was to state very clearly that our goal, part of our mission, is to have very good country outcomes, measurable outcomes for developing countries. That means the median income should be going up. Unfortunately, given COVID, it's going down, and poverty rates should be going down. Unfortunately, they've gone up, and so that's a reversal in development, which is hugely troubling. What we did, in addition to stating the mission clearly, that we want people in developing countries to do better year by year, and to have programs with their governments and with their private sector that allow it, and we want to help. We did another thing important. We realigned the bank, and this affected thousands of people within the bank, so that they were engaged at the country level. And so it put more emphasis on country programs for the bank. I think it's been a huge success. And of course, we've done much more, a climate change action plan, and changes in the instruments that we use. So we're making a lot of, I think, improvements in the World Bank. You're right. I was a critic of development and of multilaterals for not being as effective as they should, and I'm trying to do the best I can to improve those outcomes.